Hey Alex, excellent work. Um, you did the assignment perfectly, and I appreciate the effort you put into this. I realize the process of going out shooting with an eye towards light and composition is new for most people, and I can tell that you um, did your editing in Photoshop and paid attention to some of my suggestions. Um, So let's see. I wanted to start with this one. I like what you did here. I think in Photoshop, what I'd like to do, since this is the focal point here, is to slightly darken this background again relative to the door. And let's see, where's Photoshop? Right here. So I pasted your picture into Photoshop, and I'm grabbing the lasso tool and just lassoing around this door here. This is pretty simple. And then feather this out by select and mask, hit feather, and OK. And then inverse the selection, so select inverse. And now that the outside is selected, I'm image, adjustment, brightness, contrast when I'm lowering bright areas. And pull that down a bit more, like that. Good. And then let me raise the contrast a little more on the inside. So I'm going to inverse one more time and hit levels this time because I'm bringing up the contrast. So I hit Control L, image adjustment levels, and richen the black a little bit, bring up the highlights a little bit more, somewhere in there. That looks about right. And deselect. So notice how I reversed things a little bit, darkened the background, brought light into the door, and how that compares to this image here. Okay. So moving along, let me click the next one. I like this point of view very much, and I can tell you did darken the outside. And I like the very narrow depth of field, so you're shooting with a DSLR with a lens that has telephoto capability here. The fact that you aligned yourself to the rings like this and looked down and saw the repetition in here is very good. So, like that. This one is pretty good too because you're filling the frame. I like the strong diagonal here and the repetition of all these other lines. This one's a bit dark, and it's a bit confused. So in this case, I would have focused on this interesting shadow down here and the repetition of the vertical slats on the fence. So I would have moved my body over and created a composition right down in here. Okay, this one's good. Don't let it get too dark around the edges, but this is basically okay. Let me keep moving along. This one is not as sharp as it could be, and it's a little bit dark also. So be careful not to go too far with the darkening. I like the repetition, though, of the tombstones, and be careful about your focus. This one I like a lot. Simple. This focal point comes out nicely, and isn't there isn't competition. Careful again not to depress your shadows too much, though. It's a subtle thing. Okay. The angle of this, I'm going to right click and show another trick here. So I'm going to right click, copy image, and throw it into Photoshop here. Let me bring in Photoshop, File New, and from the clipboard, create, and edit paste or Control V. And that's using the crop tool to straighten up horizon lines. I know in this case the top of the bench is kind of our focal point and the bench itself, but let's see what happens if I take the crop tool and click on the image, and oops, I want to get this ratio out of here at the top, back off here, and bring this in to the edge of the image. To use this crop tool right here, I click on the image and I adjust these corner handlebars, and then I can come out to this corner and notice that the arrow turns to a curvy arrow, and I click and drag, and I can make that horizon line level out like that, and then hit the check box or enter twice and crop it. Here's the before and here's the after. I like keeping horizon lines parallel with the edge of the frame unless it's truly pushed for an intentional skew. Let's see, this corner, tiny bit bright. And let me just take that down a little bit if I can. So I feather it. And image, adjustment, brightness, contrast. Oops, I missed that little spot there, but you get the idea. Control D. Okay, good. Okay, like this repetition in here. Trying to bring light to your focal point is still important. And for that reason, this may be my favorite of the group. I want to show one more trick to everyone here. If anybody else is watching, I'm going to right-click, copy image. File new. Edit paste, or Control V. So, you're looking up at this door. I like the light gathered in the center. Let's check the levels overall. Notice your highlights are a little bit depressed, so I'm going to, and your shadows are pushed very far to the left here. So I'm going to bring up the highlights a little more and say okay to that. Here's before, there's after. Notice as we look up at this door how it's a little bit off center to the left, and that these vertical lines are keystoning inward, we call it. So I can stretch this back out and make these perfectly vertical, just like with the bench, and parallel to the edge of the frame. And I do that by selecting all, Control A, and using free transform, Control T. And then I hold down the Control key and grab this corner, and notice that the cursor turns into a white arrow that's filled with white, and I'm going to click and drag that and pull that corner out and pull this corner out. And notice that it looks like a keystone in the top of a archway. That's why we call this effect keystoning. I'm just making sure it's not cropped off to the edge there. And deselect. Finally, I'm just going to even out the cropping left and right here. Create this perfectly centered. And I'm wondering about this bottom too, if I were to bring that in a little bit. Crop. Okay, so I leveled it, I straightened it, and I cropped it a little bit, and that's how you had it before. Great. See you in the class.